Hey Adventurers, so today is going to be a book review for Badon Hill by Anonymous. This is the sequel to Gurzil, so book 2 of the Wars of Wrath series. This is self-published fantasy, historical fantasy. It's also got a lot of Arthurian legends tied into it, very heavily Arthurian inspired in many ways, but also just historical fantasy. So it's a mixture of history taken from Earth's history, but also with a lot more fantasy elements woven into it than was just in history itself. So I'll get right into my review here. I did receive an ARC for this book, or an e-ARC actually for this book, and I wanted to make sure that I got this review out very soon, either before or as soon as the book went live. So I believe as of the time of you watching this, the book should be live now. This should be the day or the Monday after it went live, on like a Thursday or Friday of last week or something like that. I'm filming this on Thursday. I finished the book yesterday on Wednesday. None of that really matters to the actual review. But so I read Gurzil and really thought Gurzil was a really good read. I loved the writing style. I loved a lot of the things about it, and that holds true with this one. But the main focus of Gurzil was on the many goings on, specifically in Africa and Libya was where they were at primarily, and that was great. It was super cool. I love the Arthurian stuff, and so what Badon Hill did is it went and focused more on the stuff going on in Britain, the stuff going on with King Arthur, and actually more with George Bertilac. It's cool. There's a lot of stuff that really is very fun for me to see as both a history nerd and as a fantasy nerd, and then as a Arthurian, somebody who specifically really loves the Arthurian legend. We met so many amazing new characters, or not new characters, but amazing characters from Arthurian lore, specifically the ones that were introduced in this book and played a big role were Tristan and Isolde, Lancelot, Galahad, Guinevere and Arthur, and then there was several others that popped up like King Mark. It's exactly like King Mark is in all the other books, and it's great. I hate him. He's such a horrible person, but such a good character, well-written character. But there's each of these characters like this, and what was really cool in Badon Hill is it's not a retelling, or it's not exactly like all the other Arthurian legend. It's done in a way where each of these characters has their own unique spin on them and their own take on who each of these characters are, but the characteristics that make them who they are still the same, and you can still identify each of these characters for who they are in these other stories, because there's these core characteristics that tie them together through all of them, and even though they're different characters in many ways, they're still exactly the same. And I really appreciate seeing that. I really appreciate seeing how Anonymous was able to take these characters and write them in the way that the author wanted them to be written, if that makes sense. As with Gurzil, this book started out and started building from the very beginning until the very end of the book, where you have this massive event that's going on at the end of the book. That's kind of how books are supposed to happen. But it's really well done in these, where it's just building and building and building and building, and then you get to the end and everything's happening all at once, and then things start to settle down a little bit, but not to like completely, it's not a falling action. It's just, all right, we got a breath before the next step of the building phase, and I really appreciate that. Seeing that in the way that it's done, it does really build to the epic finale. But also each of these books is building upon the last book. So Badon Hill built upon Gurzil quite a bit, and Gurzil is so much of a setup for this epic fantasy series that is being written. Badon Hill ties into that and builds more upon that. As I mentioned, the extra focus on the more Arthurian side was amazing for me because I love that. But beyond that, there was one of the things that I found really cool with this one was the incorporation of religion and how that plays into things. There was a little bit of that in Gurzil, definitely. It's specifically around the fact that Gurzil basically has a cult that follows him. But there's more to it than just that. In this one, you really get to look at things from the Catholic side of things a lot more, where Galahad is a devout Catholic. A lot of the events surrounding many of the characters, like Arthur and like George, they're in many ways looking through them from a Catholicism, the lens of Catholicism, as well as the clash between Catholicism and paganism, the Druidic cultures and everything like that, and seeing how all that ties together. And that's really cool for me, seeing how the different religions specifically affect the world that's being built in a way that feels very realistic, probably because it was. As I mentioned, there was a lot of new characters introduced, and the furthering of various of the storylines. there's a really nice scene right at the end between two main characters, and kind of is this real throughout the whole book. One, you don't know what's going on. Book two, you have a sense of what's going on, but the characters are still like, was this really real, or is it really just a dream? And then that kind of ties together at the very end very nicely, and for a very nice scene. And the way that Gerzel reacts to it just, his responses to me are great. Like, he's a terrifying, evil, bad dragon, not a good dragon at all. But his responses are some of the greatest responses to really all the characters. To his response to George, his response to Sabra, his response to, I believe it's Una. So good, because he's just like, he doesn't give mercy to anybody, and he's just like, no, you failed. I don't care. You failed. And it's really cool seeing that side of Gerzel, because a lot of people say, no, I don't like the Dark Lord character. And that's true. A lot of times the Dark Lord character is not the most well done character, because he's very one-dimensional in many ways. But Gerzel, that threatening presence of him basically being a demon, a minor god, whatever you want to call him, it's terrifying. And that terror leaches through into the story, and you see it through these characters' eyes, and he's not an easy villain to overcome, and it's really well done. As you can see through my review so far, I have really enjoyed Gerzel, and I've really enjoyed Badon Hill and the series that's being written so far. But I do need to mention, for my viewers' sake, that there is quite a bit of adult content in this one. Mostly language in this book. There is a little bit of sexual content, but it tends to be fade to black type stuff, where you don't see it, it's just lead up to it or after the fact, and you get to have things happening and people's responses to that type of stuff. So it tends to be fade to black, so you don't actually see it. It's not graphic, it's not terribly graphic, but it is there. And so you do, as a reader, you do need to know that that's there, and as a reviewer, I need to point that out. Also, for me, that stuff does take my enjoyment down a little bit. The story, it doesn't take my enjoyment down to the story, just as the book as a whole and the reading experience as a whole. For me, I know for a lot of people it doesn't, but so I just have to make sure that I mention that in the review. If you read Gerzel and enjoyed it, I absolutely recommend continuing on with this series. But also, if you enjoy historical fantasy, this is or even high fantasy as a whole, this is a series that is really different than anything I've ever read before. I'm sure there's other things out there like it, especially historical fantasy. I know there's other historical fantasies out there, but the way this is done, the mixture of Arthurian legends mixed with ancient history, or not so ancient history actually, and then the way that it ties into religion and everything, the way it's all tied together works really, really good for me, and it makes me really love this series, even with the few issues that I have. So I personally love the series. If you like historical fiction or historical fantasy, it's probably a great series for you, but do know that it is darker. There is some language, some adult content in it and stuff like that. But yeah, absolutely continue this series if you read the first one and enjoyed it. That's really all I have to say about this book at the moment. I'm sure I will continue talking about it. If you want another review, I will link Liam from Liam's Lyceum. I'll link his review up in the cards. I'm sure there will be many more reviews coming out as the weeks go by, and as more people get their reviews filmed and edited and everything. And so that is my review for Badon Hill by I Anonymous. Thank you guys for watching an Erudite Adventure. We post videos every Monday and Thursday. We have our social medias linked in the description down below. I'm going to see you guys again soon. Stay warm.